scattered throughout the regions. The same is true in Siberia. You have some people groups who are very animistic. You have some that use shamans to contact spirits of nature. You have others who are Buddhist religiously. And our passion is to get the gospel to these people, to work with local churches to go and effectively share the gospel and plant churches in these different communities. And so we're looking to recruit people who have a passion for discipleship and training leaders. We're also looking for people who want to use English as a tool for outreach, for evangelism. And we're also looking for people who have a passion for ministering to the disabled community, to work alongside ministries that are already in place and encourage them, to build them up, and then to also reproduce them in unreached areas. And so we're inviting people to come over for a summer for 6 to 8 weeks and experience and see the needs of the people in the area in Krasnoyarsk and in different regions of Siberia. So if you're interested, send us an email, give us a call, get in touch. We'd love to have you come over for the summer and serve, to support the local ministries, and to get a vision for what God has in store for you.
All right. Can we go back to the PowerPoint? All right, so let's see what I got next here. Yes. So anyways, that's a really good picture of what InterAct is all about, reaching these least and sometimes unreached people groups with the gospel of Christ. And I really love the Canadian part of the video where it talks about how they want to minister and go dive deep, learning the culture and spending time with them, because that's exactly what we're doing in Alaska too. It just wasn't emphasized as strongly on the Alaska video. And I want to talk through that too, where more about InterAct in Alaska. This is what I know the most. These are the people here. We have about 15 families right now in the Alaska field. Canada is much larger, probably twice the size, and Russia's maybe 3 or 4 families right now. And just in the last couple months, we had a couple more families join InterAct. So it's been growing like it's really cool to see. So yes, this was at our annual missions conference this last summer, where all the missionaries come in and regroup and rest up a little bit and be spiritually encouraged. And so these are the people that we get to serve. And now, a lot of these people, how's it go to the next one? Uh-oh, did I mess it up? All right, next slide. Oh, there we go. Okay, so these are all the red dots that you see there are different villages that we're in. And some of them are way out there, 300 to 400 miles off the road system. Now, I was just looking it up on my phone just a little bit ago. How far is about 300 to 400 miles, to give you an estimate, or to give you a visual on it? The southern tip of Illinois is a little over 300 miles straight line distance. Imagine doing that, traveling all the way to the southern tip of Illinois with no roads and a lot of marshland, tundra, and multiple mountain ranges. And how do you get out there? You can't drive. And it would take forever to do anything else, so you have to fly. So most of Alaska is very hard to reach. About 10% of the state is accessible by road. The rest has to be done by airplane or boat, depending on if you're on the coast. And so it's very challenging living in these remote areas. It's really hard to even get an image of it in your head until you're actually doing it, until you're actually flying, and you're flying and flying and flying, and you see nothing. You see nobody for hours, nothing on the ground. And driving out here, or actually you see even flying out here. I've done a night flight around here before, and you see lights everywhere. There's always a farm thing down there that has a light on, or something over here, towns everywhere. And there's nothing out there, nothing for miles and miles, and then all of a sudden there's a village out in the middle of nowhere. And they've been living there, those people have been living there for hundreds of years, if not thousands. And there's still a lot of debate on when those people even showed up. And that's a whole other story to talk about. But anyways, it's very remote is what I'm trying to get across here. A lot of these places, living out there, there's no stores. How are you going to buy stuff? You don't really. They do. A lot of them do have a village store where you can buy a couple little things here and there, and you're not gonna live off the store. And stuff in the store is very, very, very expensive. And so, what's like say a gallon of milk cost here? Anybody know? $4. Okay. Out in a village store out there, it would probably be somewhere between $15 and $20 for a gallon of milk, if they even have it. And so you can see that it's difficult living out there. You can't do whatever you want all the time. Traveling is ridiculously expensive. We do have commercial air companies that come out, and we call them air taxis, but they're really expensive. And so flying is not always an option for everybody, and they have to save up for it. And so that's one job that I have with InterAct, is being the pilot, and we'll show some pictures later here. But it's very expensive. So having our own plane, getting people around, is a much more affordable option at times, depending on the situation. Like I mentioned too, the people groups out there, it's a hard people to reach. They have to wade through all the belief systems, and really to bring Christ in, they have to take the people group there, find what their worldview is, and really teach them and deconstruct their worldview to form a biblical worldview. And that takes an enormous amount of time and energy. The alcohol and drugs is an enormous problem up there. The suicide is huge. Alaska has the highest suicide rate per capita than anywhere in the nation, or any state in the nation. So there's so much depression. There's an enormous amount of spiritual oppression, and the devil really has a huge stronghold on these people, a fortress. And so, as a missionary out there, you're going up against a lot. And if you're bringing in Christ, you can guarantee that the devil's not going to like it, and he's going to throw a whole bunch at you. And so, so as a missionary, it can be very difficult. And so, let's see, what do I have for the next slide? See if it works. Oh, it did work. I forgot that slide. That gives you a more image of how big Alaska is over the states, and that's actual scale there. Just huge. This is a typical native village. This is the village of Grayling. It's about 350 miles away from Anchorage. It takes about 2-hour flight. And so you can see this village probably has about 250 people in the community. There's no roads. That's the Yukon River out there. And so the runway is there along the river, just above the town there. We've got one of our missionary families lives there. We were flying in for a work team project there, which I'll review later. But the villages, that's a typical village, and that's on a nice day. When the weather is bad, it's atrocious, and flying can be very dangerous out there. You have to be on your toes and know what you're doing. I'll get back to that here in a minute. I want to keep sharing on this, and then we'll share about what Amy and I do. So, I want to get back to that thing as well. Why is it important for the missionaries that are out there to really dive deep and learn the people, learn the culture? There's a lot going on there, because there is I'll get to that in a minute. I'm jumping ahead of myself. But why would they do that? Well, I think it really comes down to the big truth that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. That is a big thing out there, and a big thing everywhere. It doesn't matter, even here, right? If you know that somebody cares for you deeply and cares not just for your physical needs, but also your spiritual needs, and you really know that they care, then you're going to really listen to them, right? If you know somebody doesn't really care, you're not going to listen to them very well. And so that takes enormous time for these people to get into the communities, to be accepted in their communities. Because people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And it really comes down to that passage of Scripture. And I'm going to get to it right here. I really love this passage here with the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 19 through 23. I'll read it here. For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became as a Jew in order to win the Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though not being myself under the law, that I might win those who are under the law. I'm talking about the Mosaic law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I might share with them in its blessings. The Apostle Paul talking about, he wants to identify with every people that he's in. And he wants them to know that he really cares. So he's changing his way of life to match the people's way of life, as long as it's not sinful. He's going to those under the law. He's putting himself back under the Mosaic law so that he can identify with them, so that they will accept him, so that he can then more effectively share the gospel. And that's exactly what a lot of our missionaries are doing out there. They've put their old ways aside. They've sacrificed their nice, easy lifestyle here. We can go to Walmart whenever we want. We can go out to eat whenever we want. We've got a nice church to go to. We've got friends that love us, right? And we love them. There's a lot of good stuff living here, right? Going out to this village here, specifically this one in Grayling, is a hard village. There's a lot that Aaron and Tisha Dalton are one of the very few believers in this village, or I should say strong believers specifically. They're the Christian influence out there. And they're it. And they're there trying to raise up this local church, and they're hitting their heads against the wall of Satan's fortress. Because a lot of people don't want the gospel there. And so they're having to battle it out there. And they're there to learn the people, to be accepted by the people, so that they can more effectively share the gospel. That means putting away what I find comfortable and embracing what they have. Because when somebody cares about what you care about, you feel loved, and you feel you were more apt to listen to them, right? We were in the last Sunday, or 2 Sundays ago, we were in Nebraska in the middle of ranching country, where Amy spent some of her life. Her dad was a pastor out there. And I shared that too. I was like, hey, if I move out here, guess what? I'm going to have to learn some things. I'm going to have to learn your ranching culture. I'm going to have to learn what you guys care about, because I want to care about you, right? And so it's the same here. And guess what? Coming here, it's nice. I grew up here. I feel to some degree at home here. And I know what the people are like, what the people appreciate and value. But guess what? You know who's new here, who's trying to learn? Pastor David. Exactly. He's new here. I'm just going to call him out and pick on him a little bit. He wants to care for you guys. So he's got to learn. He's got to learn what we care about. He's got to learn with this, because he really wants, and he wants to, I haven't talked to him specifically, but I just know, he wants people to know that he cares for them, right? Exactly. And so help him out. Teach him. And that's another thing, too, with culture, it's hard, right? In these cultures here, and I'm going to give an example, and I'll share a little more here, too, on this. It is, you're going into these communities. There is a native language, but it's dying. A lot of people don't speak it. Everybody speaks English. But you're speaking English to each other, which is great, but at the same time, because it's a different culture, you say something, it means something completely to the other person. And it's not just words, it's also actions. And I did this illustration last time I was here, but I love it so much, so I'm going to do it again, because some of you might not know it or remember it. But I need one volunteer. Scott, can you come up? It's easy. Don't worry. It's not picking on you. Come on. All right. So, in our culture, what do we do for a greeting? A good handshake, right? So, Scott, give me a good handshake. All right. Okay. What just happened there? There's a whole lot that just happened there, right? And And I spoke at a college a couple weeks ago at their missions conference, and I did that. And I said, "What happened there?" And the kid up front said, "He just shook his hand." I'm like, whoa, so much more happened there. Okay, and we're going to talk through this. Okay, now let's say we shake hands again. Okay. Okay, that wasn't very good, was it? He didn't like it. You saw that. He didn't like it. You could go sit down, Scott. Thank you. Okay, there was a whole nother conversation that went on there. And in native cultures, there's a whole lot that happens without you realizing that there's stuff happening. Okay, when I shook his hand hard, that meant something. We said something right there, right? We shook it hard, firm, and we looked each other in the eye, right? And that feels good, right? It says, "I appreciate you, Scott. I want to get to know you. I like that you're here." And I look him in the eyes. There's a connection, right? We're serious about this. I like this. And we appreciate each other. That's the conversation being had. Now, the second time, what? I gave him a dead, limp fish, right? And I didn't look him in the eyes. And he went, right? Because it feels bad. You're like, "I don't want to talk to you. And you're not, what are you even shaking my hand for, right?" That's our culture. And there's whole conversations being had, and we don't even know the conversation being had because it's our own culture. Okay? Something completely different happens in the native culture when you do that. A whole different conversation. And I learned this the hard way because I was doing this at my home church in Anchorage, and we have a number of native people that come. And I had a conversation with one of the other members of our church, and I said, "I just can't seem to get a good handshake out of these natives." And and he very much corrected me and shared what is happening when I'm doing this. And it means something totally different. It says, when I shake a native person's hand firmly, and I look them in the eyes, I'm having a completely other conversation that I didn't know. And when I shake their hand firm, it says, "You are less than me. I am over you, and you will listen to what I say. I'm in command." And then when you look them in the eyes, it says it's a threat. You're threatening them, or challenging them, and you don't want to do that, right? And so for years, I didn't know this, I was sending the wrong message to the people I was shaking hands with. And it's very difficult. When you're going into these cross-cultural communities, you've got to learn this stuff. And it's hard because it's part of their culture. You can't ask somebody, "What's part of your culture?" I mean, some things you can, but the underlying things, people can't tell you. It's like asking a fish how the water is. They don't know. It's the water, right? It's just what they live in. And so going into these cultures can be very difficult, learning all this stuff. And you can imagine the stress that it would cause and the mixed messages that you might send without even knowing it. So that is one of the big things that why you're going into these places and coming back to exactly what Paul said, that even to the weak, I became weak, that I might win the weak. To these natives, they're going in and they're trying to learn the ways, embrace their way of life in order to win them to the gospel. And that's hard. You got to sacrifice some of the ways that you've been living. They do things differently. They eat weird things. I mean, some things are the same that we eat, but some of the native food, whoo. Okay, I figured out that because I got to try some stuff throughout the years, if I was on a deserted island and all I had to eat was muktuk, what's muktuk? That's whale blubber, I would probably live. If I was on a deserted island and all I had was seal, I would die. It's disgusting. It tastes like extremely fishy jerky. Like, it's terrible. And anyways, but that fish ice cream, we had a talk at home the other day about it. They do fish ice cream. It's terrible. Well, some people think it's terrible, and sometimes it is. It's a lot of a white fish that they mix with frozen berries and a lot of sugar and Crisco. And heavy on the Crisco, and it's very some and different tribes make it differently than others. And I've had some that was actually good that I took seconds on, and I had some that I was like, didn't want to finish the bowl. And but you're going into these communities, and if you care about what they care about, they're going to feel loved. If you're like, meh, I'm going to stick to my own food that I'm used to, they're going to notice that. They're not going to be as accepting of you. Okay? And so they have to set aside their old ways and become like the people that they're in. Just like the Apostle Paul saying here, he's becoming like the people that he wants to be, that he's around, so that he can share the gospel. And let's put that into real concepts here. Can you do that here? I mean, even with each other, yes. And okay, but let's say you're going to another part of the country. Could you potentially be a Packers fan if it meant to share the gospel? Yes. Okay, could you be a Bears fan? Exactly. Or for me, I wasn't as big into football. I was more into baseball. And could I be a Cardinals fan? Well, back then I would say no way. I've since changed. I'm definitely still a Cubs fan. I have not changed from that. But my mindset has changed more. And when we cling to our old ways. And let me just say that too. Is there anything wrong with being a sports fan of a certain team? Absolutely not. Is there anything wrong of cheering on and doing all that stuff and even having rivals with your friends? Absolutely not. That's totally acceptable and is fun. However, how many of us have seen people even get, and I'm not saying in this church, but overall, how many people have seen people get hostile over teams and get into big fights just because their team did something to the other team or won or lost or all this stuff? You see it a lot. And if that is going to be a stumbling block and an issue to the people that you're around, and you're there to share the gospel, all of us are here to share the gospel. It doesn't matter if you use the term missionary or not. And everybody gets confused on that term missionary. I think everybody is maybe not called to be a missionary. Everybody's called to be a disciple maker. I believe that firmly, that everybody is called to be a disciple maker. And so is that going to be a stumbling block to you and sharing the gospel and making disciples? If it is, then you have an issue of pride in your heart. Because it's just a sports team, and you've got an eternal issue on your hands, and you want this person to be a brother with you in Christ. That has challenged me greatly in those areas, and that's what these missionaries are doing out there. So, anyways, all this, that's a big challenge. They're setting their old ways aside, learning the ways of the people, even the things that are uncomfortable for them. They're putting their old ways aside in order to share the gospel. That's a lot to ask somebody, to go out to these places and to do this. And so you can imagine burnout is big. People need help on a lot of different things. And so what Amy and I, and what our role is with InterAct, is we are to, first and foremost, to support and encourage the people that are on the front lines of ministry. You got a soldier that's on the front lines of battle, he's got at least 100 people backing him. And 100 different, or even 1,000 different people supporting what he's done. And in order for that soldier to make it on the field, there's a lot of people that have had a hand in him getting there. It's the same with these missionaries. And we're the boots on the ground support for these missionaries. And so a lot of times they can't get out of the village. Or flying is too expensive. So one of my primary jobs with InterAct is I'm a pilot and mechanic for them. I fly this plane. It's an A36 Bonanza, single engine, has 6 seats in it, a good cruising airplane. Cruises fast, almost about 200 miles an hour, and has been a great tool to use for this. This next one is a video. I don't know if it'll play, though. Joel said it might not play. That's okay, it doesn't play. But it's jammed in. It's just panning around to the glorious mountains there. Last winter as I was flying out going to the villages, we had the whole family with me. And we went out to the village of Cookies to just go there and spend time, a whole family, going going out to encourage the missionaries there. They had 6 kids there, so my kids had a blast with them. And we're there to just encourage them, see what their needs are, how can we help them, and how can we how can we help them? Just because somebody says a list of needs they have, you don't realize some of the hardships that they have until you go into these communities and until you really see what they're working through. And I got more stories to share on that, which will be tonight. So come back tonight and you'll hear more stories. We do lots of expediting, shopping for people who are out in these villages. They can't come into town, so they give us grocery list orders. This was for one of the summer camps, a $2,000 grocery order just for the food for the week. And then it gets put on the plane and we fly it out. We do lots of hospitality in our house. We live right next to the airport there in Anchorage, the big international airport. And so we're picking up people all the time that are coming and going through Anchorage. We have a good staging ground for people to gather their supplies before they move back out to the villages. I also do a lot of, well, actually, we're still on that expediting thing on this slide. This is a fun slide because a lot of our missionaries, especially the ones who are on the Yukon River, because there's a barge system that goes down it, and flying all your food out is extremely expensive. The barge is much cheaper, and so they give us a years-long grocery list. Can you imagine making a grocery list to last you for a year? I mean, it's not the fresh and frozen stuff, but just all the dry goods. And so everything that's in that big crate on the front, that's a year's worth of groceries. And then other supplies on the back there. And our discipleship program that we have throughout the winter for Native believers who want to be more intensely discipled, they come in, and one of the things they did was build that sled on top of the thing. It's not a dog sled, it looks like one. It's meant to be pulled behind a snow machine, or snowmobile. You guys call them snowmobiles. Up there we call them snow machines. But that one is a gorgeous sled that is all hand-tied the old native way and is phenomenal design and super strong. But anyways, that was one day where I got to, well, it takes almost sometimes up to a week to gather all the supplies and get it organized and then to put it all in a crate and put everything up onto a trailer and then drive it about 6 hours north to where the barge is. And so that's one of the big things we do during the summer, lots of supply gathering. And we do lots of coordinating work teams. I did 4 different work teams this summer. I couldn't find a picture of the 4th one, but you'll recognize the one in the top right there. That's the Bethel team. And that was a blast. That was super fun, specifically with that team, because we went out and helped the missionaries of Ron and Jean Paul out in the village of Copper Center, one of our few villages that's on the road system. And they got to do what Amy and I's job is, to go out, see what the needs are, to help the people with maybe different projects, but ultimately to be there to encourage them. And so we did all kinds of things. We did, we gutted one of the back parsonage building. We chopped them over a year's worth of firewood and a whole handful of other projects. And it was a lot of fun just to have Bethel up there. And we want to have you guys back. And we've got more in store, and whether we go to the same place or not, I'm not sure yet. There's lots of stuff we could do. But if you're interested and want to know more and want to come up to Alaska, even if it's not with the Bethel team, we'd still love to have you up there. And we can house you. We can give you a car for however long you're there. And we love having guests. And yes, the summer is busy, but don't let that bother you. Just come. We'd love to have you. And so that's a big part of our job, is doing all this, but ultimately encouraging and supporting the missionaries who are out in the field. When they come in, we want our place to be a nice, safe, easy place where they can just let their guard down and really, hopefully, relax. Because out in the villages, their guard is up constantly. I know a number of missionaries that they don't let their kids out of their sight at all, because there's so much stuff with sexual abuse. and other potential hazards. That they have a tight grip on everything because they don't want stuff to happen to their kids. Nobody does. And so when they come out, we want to spoil them. We take them out to eat. We do a whole bunch with them and hopefully give their parents a kid-free date or something like that, and help them go around town getting all the things they need for before they go back out. And so that's a really fun thing to do. Do I not have? I'm going to have to fix that for next service. We're supposed to have a slide at the end that shows the frontline missionaries that we have. It's a picture of each one of the missionary families that we have out there. And to Amy and I, those people are the true heroes to us. They're the ones that have sacrificed their nice, good, easy life to go out to share the gospel to a hard-to-reach people group. And they have a huge heart for this, and that's the people we want to support. So ultimately,